Hello, everybody, and welcome to UW Esports interview with UW alum, class of 2000, Michele Morrow. She wears many hats, and one of them is co-producer of the YouTube Red original series, Good Game. Michele, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Ray. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. So if you could please give us a quick introduction of yourself and just your history at UW.
Sure. Oh, my history at UW. Well, that was a very long time ago now. But let's see. I majored in drama and I minored in speech communications. And then I moved to Los Angeles in 2000, and I pursued a career in entertainment. I did some small indie movies and television until I started to break into the hosting world, where I focused on video games. I got jobs reviewing games, writing about games, producing shows about video games, and that kind of led to esports. So I was the host of BlizzCon for 6 years, and I also hosted TBS E-League. So I did Street Fighter and Tekken. And I worked for ESPN 2 for Heroes of the Dorm, the collegiate championship. And I also did daily esports newscasting for Bleacher Report.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I understand you are a woman of many talents in hosting, acting, writing, producing. But what was your first job in the gaming and interactive media industry, and how did you find an in?
Oh wow, my first job, I I was hired by a friend of mine. I was working actually as a personal assistant here in Los Angeles, just as like a side hustle, and they needed a host to do a Tekken 5 review, an interview with the developers, and they needed me there like that day. So I rushed over. I got in my car. I had barely any time to review any of the work, and I interviewed the developer and did a little playthrough testing on Tekken 5. I think this must have been 2007 ish, around then. And that was my first video game thing that I had done. After that, it was probably a couple years later, 2009 or 10 or so, maybe 11 even. I started to write for Hello Giggles and Nerdist.com, and I was doing their video game articles, like columns. So I was a weekly columnist for Hello Giggles. And from there, it kind of went into more hosting for a place called Bite Size TV. Another friend of mine saw that I was writing about video games, knew that I had a lot of experience on camera, and they were hiring somebody to do app reviews for this new TV network that had popped up called Bite Size TV. So I started to do app reviews, and that was really the thing that got me more entrenched into this world. Even though I had that one little kind of one-off earlier on, because I was writing so much about video games, I was just noticed by a friend who knew that they were hiring for this very specific thing.
Awesome. So, kind of along the same vein, what professional experience have you accrued in the gaming and interactive media industry? And what current projects or activities are you working on?
Yeah, you said skills. What skills?
Yeah, professional experience, skills.
Sure. Well, being on camera is a big part of it. I learned a lot of that at University of Washington in the drama department. So being on camera, having improv training was really important. So I have a lot of improv training. Reading teleprompter, also very important. Learning how to break down a script, learning how to research and study. Those things were all important skills to really have before going into the field. And then after that, it was, researching different games, playing different games, becoming familiar, making myself familiar with the news, and knowing how to be on camera with somebody else. That's, I think, one of the most difficult parts of the job that I don't know if people understand that as they go into it, because everybody feels like it's about them being on camera, but it's really about the chemistry that you have with your co-hosts and other people that you're on camera with. Um, learning games that I didn't know. Like, for instance, when I went into Tekken 7 to be a sideline reporter, I didn't really know anything about the game. Like, I knew a little bit playing it on my own, but not like, I didn't know the players. I didn't know who they were. So I studied beforehand, and I met with a pro player who helped me learn, like, very badly, but learn at least some of the game. I think being able to hone those research skills in, know what you need to know and know what you don't need to know, knowing that you can lean on the other analysts and casters for their expertise as well. Everybody brings their own thing to the table. You don't need to bring everything, but the thing that you do bring, you need to be able to do it well. So I think I've honed in that quite a bit, especially with BlizzCon. Um, and then I took all of my experiences in gaming in general, whether it was my experiences with sexism, whether it was my experiences with diversity in general. And I made a TV show called Good Game that we released in 2017 with Dan Harmon and the Game Grumps. And with YouTube Red was where we distributed it. And so I created a show from scratch. I learned how to write a treatment. I worked with writers to develop the storyline. We hired actors and did part of the casting process. And we told a story about, an underdog team in esports and how they were going up against, the big leagues, like the guys who've got money, sponsors and whatnot, and how a team starts from scratch. So I really had to learn about the industry as a whole. And I wanted to use those experiences and infuse them into one show. So that was a huge point of pride for me. And now right now, with COVID, it's been so weird, right? Because there's no events really, like not like in person that we can do. So I do hosting online. I'll still conduct interviews, and I've been moderating different panels. I have a podcast that I've been doing as well about the sort of the human side of gaming. It's called the Game Diaries. I do that with pro player Miss Harvey. We just did season 1 last year, so I've been focusing on that and developing a couple new shows now.
Awesome. Yeah. I feel like especially during COVID times, just everything is so unsure, and people really just have to, stay on their toes and
Yeah.
improv essentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You just kind of like, you just have to create, find what makes you happy and move toward that. Like if it's gaming, move toward it. So I've been playing a lot of World of Warcraft, let's be honest.
So what is the best part of the gaming and interactive media industry for you, and what parts of it would you like to change?
Oof. Well, let's see. The best parts of it for me are the relationships that I've made. I have a lot of great friends that I've made because of gaming, because I've met people hosting different events or doing my show or interviewing people. I've made a lot of really great friends and people that I've learned so much from. There's a great network in gaming and that I really benefit from. And I know that a lot of people in the gaming sphere would agree. I think that's probably the best part of it. You get to go to cool events. You get paid to be playing video games, to be having a good time and like learning new games and meeting players who make a living out of it by actually playing professionally. I've learned so many amazing stories about people, like their backgrounds and how they got into gaming or why gaming is important to them. And those are the things that are really important to me. If there's something I could change about it, it would definitely be the sexism that happens. And it's definitely a lot better than it used to be when I was younger. But it still's got a long ways to go. We still reward men who won't play with women. We still see a lot of teams that don't have female representation at all. And the thing is, like, there is no physical barrier between men and women to be playing together. And, at a pro level, I would often ask, like, where are the women? Because there'd be so many times, at least in the beginning, I would be the only woman on a broadcast. And that drove me nuts. And a lot of women were kind of only offered the sideline reporter roles, which that's a great role. And that's a lot of fun, that role. But if that's the only role that's being given to a woman and not anchoring the show or being an analyst, there's a problem with the system. There's clearly a problem with whoever's hiring or whoever's recruiting. I think we've seen some great wins lately, like in Valorant. There's a co-ed team recently that was put together, so that gives me a lot of hope. We had a woman win Hearthstone in 2019, the World Championship at BlizzCon. Her name was Lion. She won, which is huge. We've had Scarlett, who's transgender, who won the Olympics for StarCraft. We've got Ricky, Ricky Ortiz, who I think does Street Fighter. So we do have women. We have Miss Harvey and the entire CLG Red team for CSGO. There are women who play, but I want to see men and women playing together. I don't think there should be a problem with that. And I think we need to do better about reaching out to women, meeting them where they're at, and bringing them in, whether it means that different games need to be played at the university level. That was a big discussion I had yesterday with some developers. In pro esports, you'll say, where are the women? They're like, well, it needs to start at the college level. That's where it needs to start. And then you go to the college level and they're like, it's got to start at K through 9 or K through 12. It's got to start there. We should go to K through 12. And then sure, it just keeps getting pushed back. And I want to see it happen now.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just to throw in my 2 cents here.
Please do. I would love to hear it.
Yeah, of course. I think when you look at a lot of pro gamers and you ask them, how'd you get into gaming? Their answer is always going to be, well, I grew up playing this game, So I feel like a lot of it is really changing the conversation around girls gaming, just throwing away that archaic mindset of girls do this, guys do this. I would say, I feel like that's honestly, why we see such a huge discrepancy between men and women when you go into professional esports and competitive esports. Absolutely. For the most part, because it, especially at the competitive level, it's not just something that you can tell someone to, go and do, right? So really, yeah, exactly. Changing the culture, the conversation around it, making sure to foster a welcoming environment for girls in gaming from the beginning is especially important.
Yeah, that's why it is important for K through 12. And just to give you some perspective on it, just from my alumni status of, when I graduated college in 2000, the Xbox didn't even exist, right? There was a LAN center or a computer room that you could go rent out, but people didn't have their own PCs. It just was not accessible at all. And to give you even more perspective, when I was growing up, I'm 43 now. When I was growing up, we had Atari and NES, and the commercials back in the day used to be boys and girls and moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas playing together. It was seen as a family unit. In Japan, even, I think the Nintendo is called Famicom. It's about family. But then somewhere in after the video game crash happened in 83, no video games are being sold. It was oversaturated. And then places like Nintendo had to have a reason to be able to sell things. It became a marketing thing. Marketers ended up saying to them, well, who is this for? Who is this for? And they ended up having to categorize it as a toy. And in that, they had to subcategorize it as a boy's toy. So this really came down to marketing. This wasn't based on numbers, who was playing. Because when I was a little girl, all my girlfriends played Nintendo. Everybody played Nintendo. It was not separated by gender. So for me, when I went to college, it just didn't exist. So it wasn't, I had my Nintendo and my Super Nintendo that I brought with me to college, but it didn't there was the original PlayStation, but not a lot of kids had the original PlayStation, like at least in college when I went to college. And like people were playing like Smash Brother tournaments in dorm rooms and fraternities, but we weren't. It wasn't really a big gender thing until I moved to Los Angeles, and I was doing an interview for a movie, and somebody asked me what I like to do, and I had discovered World of Warcraft at that time, and I said, "Well, I've been playing World of Warcraft." They're like, "Girls, you play games? Like you're a girl?" And I was like, "Wait, what? Like what are you talking?" So for me, the whole gender conversation didn't even start for me until I was like 24, 25, 26, maybe actually a little bit later than that. I started playing Warcraft at like 29. So it really wasn't until I was older that I even heard that. And I think with your generation, you guys have grown up with this inequity where, you know, I didn't grow up with that. I didn't grow up with like a genderified, like boys play games and girls don't. It really wasn't until high school that it became a like more of a like, yeah, dudes, like all the commercials for Super Nintendo were like the Power Glove, and, you know, it got really like boy centric. But you know, so many girls were playing at that time. I don't think it really hit us that it was different, or that women couldn't play. It's unfortunate. I've seen it happen over the last, you know, 20 years. It become so much more gate kept by men. It's unfortunate. So I'm really hoping that we can figure out a way to get back to it being for everyone and go back to it being a family activity, so that parents know that they can have their son and daughter playing together, or their daughter playing with the neighborhood kids, whether they're boys and girls, whatever. It shouldn't matter.
Yeah, totally agreed.
Sorry, I went on a rant there, but I
No,
wanted
no,
you
no,
to
no.
know,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you know, it was just, it was different. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
these types of attitudes and behaviors are definitely taught, right? And
yeah.
I'm actually a marketing major, so I know
Oh,
all of
interesting.
the, yeah, I definitely
Interesting.
know all of the targeting and subliminal messaging, I guess,
Oh,
that
yeah.
goes into running those types of campaigns and marketing a product, really.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much for that conversation. You know,
Sure.
it's definitely very valuable, and I hope we can definitely put it up when we do our
It's something to
Pacu
think about,
reel.
right? Like even a lot
Yeah.
of esports tournaments that the developers put on is out of a marketing budget. These aren't out of like event budgets where they're going to be making huge amounts of money, because that doesn't exist. They're looking at this as a marketing budget for their specific game. So it's
Mhm.
kind of like we got to think about, you know, if we want women to be involved in gaming, we have to be talking to the people who are marketing and say, like, who are you advertising this to? Like, are you doing this because it's a quick, like, oh, it's Q1 and we have to get this thing out because in Q2 we got to do it real fast? And are they looking to expand the audience, or are they looking to just get the active audience members right there, whatever's easy, whatever's the low hanging fruit, really quick to get people into play, instead of reaching in and meeting people where they're at? And this applies not only to just women, but all diverse groups. You know, it's not just women.
Yeah, totally. And keeping that conversation in mind, what advice would you give someone interested in pursuing a career in esports or the gaming and interactive media space?
Learn everything you can. There's not a whole lot of curriculum available for this. I would tell you, take an improv class if you want to be in front of camera. Take improv. Um, Make friends with the drama department. Learn how to put on an event. Learn how to put on, like in drama, we learned how to put on a play. Everybody in the class had a different role they had to put the play on, whether it was set design or lighting or whatever it was. Like you can definitely do that in college, to put together an event and have every person play a role. I would say learn as much as you can. If it's, you know, teaching yourself how to read teleprompter, there are teleprompter apps on your phone. Learn how to do that, because that's a skill. A lot of people try to poo-poo it because they don't know how to do it. But if the teleprompter can be one of your best friends in a broadcast if you know how to use it. So yeah, improv, teleprompter for on camera. working with other people to put the events on. Try to learn as much as you can. Play the games. Like if you don't know a game, play the game and read up about it. There's different Reddit forums. Which aren't always fun, but there's different forums that you can go to learn about the community of the game. Games are driven by their communities, and the love that people share for the games. So being able to understand the community, if you're going to be working on, CSGO and you don't know anything about CSGO, learn about the community, see what they're like, what are they into, what's important to them, and, research it. I think that would be the biggest piece of advice. And also know that relationships are so important. Knowing the whole who you know thing, it definitely comes into play. Like it's the people you meet along the way. And you never know who's going to have an opportunity for you later on in life. Like you just never know. I've had people hit me up 4 years later to be like, hey, I want to know if you want to host this thing, or hey, we're going to be doing this show. I'd love for you to consult, or, can you come produce? Like that happens because of relationships and making sure that you're keeping your reputation above board. And I don't know, I think just as a general life rule, be careful on the internet and what you post on social media. Just be very careful in general and treat it all like a business. It's not just, if you want to have your social media be for, have one that you have with your friends and have another that's business facing. Know that like everybody looks at everything you do. So try to put the most professional face forward if you want to go into this business.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mention, taking a drama class or an improv class and, being aware of the lighting, the different roles that goes into producing something. Because I'm actually, or I was going to be a dance major.
Oh,
I ended up just taking a bunch of dance classes, but yeah, and I grew up doing dance as well. So I feel
awesome.
I feel like our backgrounds are not exactly like the same, but very similar.
Look, being able to understand how a show works, being able to understand what the performers need, whether that means that you are the performer or it means that you are supporting the performers, because it is a show. And you've got to keep that in mind. Esports it's a show, and it takes people, it takes a whole lot of people to make it work, and I think having a creative background really can help people quite a bit in this industry specifically.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, no problem. I'm sorry my lighting is so messed up. Like
no, it looks so fine. You're
okay.
Good.
like we have clouds today for the first time in Los Angeles, so
oh wow,
I miss Seattle.
It's actually sunny in Seattle too, but
we just swapped.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, from my other interviews that I've done, the general consensus is that esports is still a developing industry, but it is rapidly developing. I mean, if you've just seen the growth in esports, the esports industry over the past few years only, it's insane.
The event I did in 2015, it was Heroes of the Dorm on ESPN2 for the game Heroes of the Storm, the big collegiate tournament. And that was the very first time esports was on a major American television network. It was the first time, and there was a whole, you definitely read about it because it's something interesting I think people could learn from, but it was the first time that was really aired on a big network where people watching it were like, what am I watching? What is this? And you had people who were really into sports who were really angry about it. You had people who were really into games, like super excited. It was interesting. And that was just 2015. That's when that happened. So it's only been 6 years or so, 5.5 years, where we've been seeing this growth. And it's only going to get bigger and bigger. We just need people in it who want to support it and figure out how the industry can become more stabilized and less fragmented.
Yeah, and as we're learning more about this growing industry, we really appreciate hearing your journey navigating through this scene. And hopefully our viewers will be able to take something away from your experience as well.
If anybody can learn from it, I would be so happy.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I hope everyone enjoyed our conversation here, and see you next time.
Thanks, Ray. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.